United States and the coalition that engages in these operations is, how do you know whether you've won? How do you know, what yardstick do you use at that point? Let's say we're 3 days into this operation, and then we just decide at some point that's enough and stop?
Well, I think you have to go into the operation first with a military objective, which is to decide what capabilities of his you want to damage or destroy, and to have your own benchmark about what is the level of harm that you've inflicted, the operational effectiveness that you've imposed on him. But again, it has to be then in the context of the broader strategy, which is what you don't want to see happen is him simply kind of dust himself off, take the blow, and then carry on as if nothing had happened. So you have to think not only about the first strike, but how you posture yourself so that he doesn't feel at the end that he's been able to ride it out.
Paul Wolfowitz, you want to do more than just these strikes. You want to arm the rebels because you want to decisively shift the balance of power. What do you say to those people, and I know they exist within the U.S. military, who say, look, we've been trying for a year and a half now to find these moderate rebels, and the opposition to Assad is disaggregated, it's dispersed, hundreds if not more militias. Some of them are radical, allied with al-Qaeda, others are not. In any event, this is much more difficult to do, and don't pin your hopes on this.
Fareed, we had a lot more options 2 years ago. The opposition has become more radicalized because we've sat on our hands. I don't believe we've tried very hard to do anything for the people that are identified as moderates, the Free Syrian Army. Face it, we don't want to send in American troops. You've got Hezbollah fighters, you've got Assad fighters, you've got al-Qaeda fighters. The only people who might promise something better are the Free Syrian Army, and we should be supplying them with both lethal and non-lethal weapons. And one thing that is very confused in the strategy now, sometimes the president seems to say we're not aiming to shift the balance of forces in Syria. Sometimes he talks to Senator McCain and Senator Graham and he says we are. I think it is essential that we do so. I tend to agree Assad has got enough on his hands without retaliating, but he is certainly going to step up the pressure on the opposition to demonstrate that he's not defeated and may even claim that he's the victor from our strikes. It's important to make clear he's not.
Wes Clark, could you arm and train these rebels, given what you know about them?
I think there's an arming and training program going on. Some can be. But I think, and again, I'm not trying to, let me step out of the chairman of the JCS role for a second. If they're going to be successful, they're going to have to occupy some piece of ground inside Syria and claim it as their own. That's the way movements like this succeed. Bosnia would never have happened if it had simply been President Izetbegovic in Paris saying, please kick the Serbs out of Bosnia. And what happened in Kosovo happened because people were on the ground and there was a strong political force associated with the fighters. So the Free Syrian Army has to have some politics behind it, and it has to have some territory. Can people be trained to fight? Of course they can be trained to fight. Can it be done overnight? No. It takes months to build a chain of command, to rehearse, to prepare these people, to equip them. That's what's been going on. But what we really are after is what Paul says. You've got to have the political, diplomatic impact of this. And to do that, you've got to have somebody on the other side of the table from Assad.
But you raise an important point, which is that the Free Syrian Army does not seem to control much territory at this point. I think I saw a report that said of Syria's 14 major cities, it doesn't control any. Nicholas Burns, let me ask you about the intriguing prospect you raised, which is, let's say this operation takes place, it has some success. You want to then use that to try to build on it and get some kind of negotiated settlement, a political settlement. How would you do this, and do you think the Russians will play ball?
Well, the United States has to find a way to unite the use of force with a follow-on diplomatic strategy. And sometimes they can reinforce each other, as they did in Bosnia and Kosovo very successfully under President Clinton's leadership. And that depends, Fareed, on the strike being significant enough that it does, in effect, deter President Assad. And Senator McCain has been making that very good point. If that's the case, if Assad can be effectively intimidated, there might be a possibility for the United States then to launch another diplomatic effort under Secretary Kerry to see if we can work with a very cynical Russian government to bring about some kind of ceasefire. There's a humanitarian catastrophe underway in Syria, and the Syrian people need relief from this war. That would be one objective. But let's even become more ambitious. Is there a way to bring Iran into those talks that might reinforce what we need to do with the Iranians on the nuclear issue, and that is have direct conversations with them and try to begin a way to work with this very new Iranian government, test them to see if they're willing to adopt some kind of more pragmatic policy themselves in Syria. There are lots of opportunities, but it all starts with the effective use of military power, so it has to be significant enough in its strike capacity.
All right, James Steinberg, we're going to have to go, but if you were running this National Security Council meeting, any decisions you need taken that were not taken, any last thoughts?
I do think that one of the critical decisions we have to make is what do we need to be prepared for in terms of retaliation. It's not just the Syrian military. We have to think about Hezbollah and others who will be tempted to try to use this and to harm American interests, to go after American civilians. So we need to make sure we have a good posture worldwide to protect Americans. And then to reinforce Nick's point, we have to have a full court press afterwards to make sure that when all is said and done, that Assad is not in a better position, not able to simply carry on with his efforts as if the strike had never happened.
Gentlemen, thank you. Very, very interesting, successful meeting. Maybe we'll reconvene when this all actually happens. Up next, what in the world? When President Obama visited Sweden.